Hey History family, welcome back to our channel. Today we're exploring the life of Yakov Dzhugashvili, the son of Joseph Stalin, one of history's most infamous dictators. Yakov's life was filled with turmoil, conflict, love, and a quest for his father's approval. Stick around as we dive into this captivating story of a son living under the shadow of his notorious father. In 1907, Joseph Stalin wasn't the leader of the Soviet Union. In fact, he wasn't known as Joseph Stalin at all. He was a Marxist robber from a poor household, a would-be priest had he not rebelled and become an atheist. His name was Joseph Vissarionovich Dzhugashvili. That year, he robbed a bank in Tiflis, stealing about $3.4 million for the Bolshevik cause, and secured his place among Vladimir Lenin's most coveted followers. That same year, his wife, Yekaterina Tsvanitsa, delivered their first son, Yakov Dzhugashvili. However, there was no time for the family to celebrate as the Tsarist police were hunting him, forcing the family to flee to Baku in Azerbaijan. Along the way, his wife fell ill with typhus, and only 9 months after their son's birth, she passed away at just 22. At her funeral, the mourning-to-be dictator said, "This creature softened my heart of stone. She died, and with her died my last warm feelings for humanity." Overwhelmed with grief, Joseph Dzhugashvili adopted a new name, Joseph Stalin, Man of Steel. He thrust himself further into his revolutionary duties, leaving his son Yakov behind. Yakov was sent to live with relatives in Georgia and was often described as a quiet and studious boy. But the absence of his mother and the distant relationship with his father took a toll on him. In 1921, his father sent for him, launching him on a tumultuous path. When Yakov left Georgia to live with his father, Stalin was a top official in the communist government and on the way up. Yakov found that his father had remarried. Indeed, after a long period of grieving, Stalin married his second wife, Nadezhda Alliluyeva, in 1919. This probably wasn't the match he had found with his first wife, as both regularly argued. Stalin had 2 kids with his second wife. Yakov's brother, Vasily Stalin, was born in 1921, and his sister, Svetlana, was born in 1926. Living in Stalin's apartments at the amusement palace in the Kremlin, Yakov slept in the dining room. He was close to his half-siblings, as well as his stepmother Nadezhda, who was only 6 years older than him. In November 1932, Nadezhda killed herself. Frustrated by frequent arguments with her stubborn husband, her life deteriorated. Following another one of their disputes, she left in a flash during a party where officials were gathered, on the 9th of November, 1932. The next day, the Soviet people heard the news that she had died that night from appendicitis, even though she had shot herself in their bedroom. Some whispered that the cause was her despair over the effect of Stalin's ruthless policies on the Soviet people. Others thought that it was the revulsion she felt for her husband. With Nadezhda's death, Yakov lost an important ally in his father's inner circle as well as a dear friend. He managed to escape Stalin's bullying several years later by joining the Red Army. If Joseph Stalin was anything, it was ruthless. Certainly, his lack of compassion helped him and his fellow Bolshevik revolutionaries, but when it came to matters of the heart, Stalin was as distant as a dying star. Stalin's father was an alcoholic and a violent drunk who abused his son and his wife. Stalin, much like his father, physically and emotionally abused his son, Yakov, and forbade him from changing his last name to Stalin. It is believed that Stalin's disdain for Yakov stemmed from the boy's similarities to his mother. He reminded Stalin of his beloved first wife, and this irritated him. Things were not helped by the fact that Yakov could hardly speak Russian and was shy. As Yakov grew older, he desperately sought his father's approval, but Stalin was a harsh and demanding man. Yakov's attempts to impress his father often fell short, leading to a strained relationship. Stalin and Yakov's relationship grew worse when in the late 1920s, Yakov met a young woman named Zoya Gunina, the daughter of an Orthodox priest. He and Zoya began living together and eventually decided to get married. The two arrived at the Stalin dacha, a small cottage typically used as a vacation home, to announce their decision to Stalin. Rather than celebrating, Stalin flew into a violent rage. His anger was so intense that it caused Zoya to flee the home in terror. Yakov, once again failing to appease his father, fell into a state of nervous confusion and fired a bullet into his chest, attempting to shoot himself in the heart. Instead, he missed, and the bullet travelled into his lung. Nadezhda, Yakov's stepmother, bandaged the young man's chest and called for a doctor. According to one version of the story, Stalin shook his head and dismissively said to his son, "You can't even do this properly." Despite his father's harshness, Yakov found solace in Zoya, and they eventually married, but their life together was anything but happy. A daughter was born on the 7th of February 1929, but she died 8 months later of pneumonia. Yakov and Zoya split up, although they did not officially divorce. After his return to Moscow, Yakov was rumoured to be marrying Ketevan Orakelashvili, the daughter of Mamia Orakelashvili, the first secretary of the Transcaucasian Socialist Federative Soviet Republic. However, Yakov was shy around her, so she instead married Evgeny Mikaladze, a prominent orchestra conductor, resulting in ridicule from Stalin. His next girlfriend was Olga Golisheva, who was also a student at the Moscow Aviation School. They became engaged, but soon that ended, although a son, Yevgeny, was born on the 10th of January 1936. Yakov only learned of his son in 1938 and ensured he took his surname, though Stalin never recognized Yevgeny as his grandson. Yakov married Yulia Meltzer, a well-known Jewish dancer from Odessa. Meltzer wanted to gain entry into Stalin's court by means of her marriage, though this did not work due to the animosity between Stalin and Yakov. They legally became married on the 18th of February 1938, the day before their only child, daughter Galina, was born. Yakov's life took another dramatic turn when World War II broke out. He enrolled in the Red Army Artillery Academy at his father's insistence. By the time he left the academy, Senior Lieutenant Yakov Dzhugashvili had been appointed commander of an artillery battery, only 1 month before the German invasion of the USSR. Yakov was a reservist in the Red Army, but when war broke out, he was sent to battle as if he were an experienced commander. This did not earn him the love of his father, who did not come to see him off personally, but rather him on the telephone and shouted at him, "Go and fight!" Yakov's time on the battlefield was short-lived, however. When July 1941 began, the German army's success in Operation Barbarossa was nothing less than spectacular. From the Baltic to the Black Sea, in 10 days German troops had penetrated deep into Soviet territory. Soviet leader Joseph Stalin's repeated no-retreat orders compounded the debacle, condemning one Soviet army after another to annihilation. Serving as a lieutenant with a battery of the 14th Howitzer Regiment. Of the 14th Tank Division near Vitebsk, Yakov was captured on the 16th of July at Smolensk, just 120 miles west of Moscow with about 300,000 Soviet troops. The circumstances of his capture are disputed. It's been said that the Germans surrounded Yakov's battery, and an order was given to retreat. But Yakov did not obey the order, saying, "I am the son of Stalin, and I do not permit the battery to retreat." While Soviet propaganda insisted all along that Yakov had been captured, his father believed his son deliberately surrendered to the Germans after being encouraged to do so by his wife. Stalin was so enraged that he had her imprisoned on suspicion that she had somehow weakened his will to fight. The Germans announced the capture of Yakov on the 19th of July. Stalin reacted negatively to the news. He had previously ordered that no soldiers were to surrender, so the idea that his son had done so was seen as a disgrace. He was angry that Yakov had not killed himself instead of being captured. The Nazis had no intention of executing or torturing Yakov. Instead, they treated him civilly, and when they interrogated him, they questioned him more about his personal and political opinions than they did about military matters. Their ultimate goal was to entice him into joining their side, using the powerful Nazi propaganda machine to show how Stalin's own son betrayed him. That same propaganda machine ensured that news of Yakov Dzhugashvili's capture was widely circulated, and though Yakov had been taken captive against his will, the Nazis publicly claimed he willingly surrendered. Despite his public position, Stalin made several secret rescue attempts to recover his son from the Germans, but each was unsuccessful. After the German army was decisively defeated at the Battle of Stalingrad in 1943, Hitler offered Stalin a deal. The Germans would exchange his son for Field Marshal Friedrich Paulus, who the Russians took prisoner at Stalingrad. In response, Stalin said, "I do not trade field marshals for lieutenants. You have in your hands not only my son Yakov, but millions of my sons. Either you free them all, or my son will share their fate." Senior Lieutenant Yakov Dzhugashvili was held for 3 weeks in the Sachsenhausen concentration camp outside Berlin, and then, at Himmler's directive, was transferred to a special camp, consisting of 3 barracks surrounded by a brick wall and high-voltage barbed wire. He shared a hut with another Soviet officer, Vasily Kokodin, a nephew of Stalin's foreign minister, Vyacheslav Molotov, and with 4 British prisoners of war. Compared with the conditions endured by the rest of Sachsenhausen's inmates, their quarters were comfortable. The inmates in his camp were permitted to walk in the early evening in the area outside their barracks. At 7 p.m. on April 14, 1943, the SS guards ordered them to go back to their barracks. All obeyed except Yakov, who demanded to see the camp commander. The guards' repeated orders were disregarded. Another SS guard tried to report the incident to the camp commander, but heard a shot while attempting to do so. Yakov, in a state of agitation, had run across the neutral zone to the barbed wire. The guard raised his rifle, ordering him to stop, but Yakov kept on going. The guard warned that he was going to shoot. Yakov defiantly shouted at the SS guard, "Don't be a coward! Shoot, shoot!" and grabbed the barbed wire gate. The guard shot him in the head and killed him. While the official story put out by Nazis at the time claimed that Yakov Dzhugashvili was gunned down during an escape attempt, recent insight has revealed that Yakov's escape attempt was more likely an act of suicide. The catalyst was the combination of the Nazis' recent revelation of his father's responsibility for the Katyn forest atrocity, where Soviet troops massacred Polish officers, his feeling of abandonment because of Order Number 270, news that his father had refused to ransom him, and an argument with a fellow British officer who accused Yakov and Kokodin of deliberately fouling the communal latrine. Overwrought with shame, hopelessness, and anger, Yakov leapt on the electrified POW fence. Yakov's tragic end was a stark contrast to the powerful image of his father. He died alone, never having received the recognition or love he so desperately sought from Stalin. Yakov Dzhugashvili's story is a poignant reminder of the personal cost of political power. His life, marked by his father's shadow, was filled with tragedy, unfulfilled dreams, and a love that was never fully realized. Yet, it also serves as a testament to the human desire for love and approval. Thanks for joining us on this emotional journey through the life of Yakov Dzhugashvili. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more captivating tales from history. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring.